All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. As people who are regular listeners to the show know, I kind of have a hoarding problem with local music, and especially when it comes to local independent labels and people doing DIY stuff. I'm a big nerd for that kind of thing. I've attempted to release my own tapes over the years, usually with poor results, but I appreciate the art that goes into it and the work that goes into sort of making local and other independent music available, especially on a format that is still sort of pretty underground these days, even though it's having a bit of a comeback. So the guest on this episode is the owner of a label in the city, and I think the best way to start this off is if you want to just introduce yourself and then maybe give a bit of background about the label so we listeners know what we're talking about.
Yeah, hi. I run Some Music Can Hurt You. It's a record label that is based here in Winnipeg. And I specialize in releasing noise and grind. Specifically, I try to give a platform to explicitly left-wing artists and projects, along with marginalized people who are in the scene.
So how did this get started? I'm assuming that you must have been involved in that scene, before you kind of put this together. Were you making your own music before this got launched?
Oh yeah, I had been making some pretty not very good like noise grind at the time, and upon realizing that I wanted to have physical releases for it, I just started doing them myself, and that's how the label started, and it's continued from there.
It seems like just looking at your releases that you have online, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and it's not all local. I mean, you seem to have stuff from all over the place, whether you're distributing it or you're releasing it. I imagine you must have had some kind of involvement within the larger scene for this kind of music to begin with, to be able to get your foot in the door in terms of attracting artists and just getting permission to release some of the stuff locally on tape.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely helps to be an artist already before you start a label. And like for me, I don't know, I think I just started out when it came to like releasing for other artists. I kind of started out with like releasing for people that I had already done splits and stuff with.
Okay.
Which made it a lot easier because I already knew those people. I already knew all that sort of thing. And it just kind of went from there. And I think the first release that wasn't for one of my own projects was for a guy in Germany. His project was called Mescal and Nausea. I don't know if that project's still going on or not, but that was the first one that was not one of my own projects.
Okay. Well, I have maybe a weird question, and when it comes to this kind of music, and I know there's a lot of artists who just release just massive amounts of content. I'm assuming in a lot of cases because everything's so fast and often so short, and it seems like there's just this like kind of never-ending churn of content coming out of a lot of people playing this kind of stuff. What are you looking for as someone who's putting this music out there, as far as what you want to release? Like what kind of stuff within that existing genre are you kind of what appeals to you, I guess?
Well, like I said earlier, I try to focus on releasing for explicitly left-wing artists along with marginalized artists, because it's important to keep keep the scene politically in the right spot, but also like I try and release albums that I will want to have in my collection. I like to release I try and make the tapes, I release something that I think will be fitting on one of the tapes that I like to make, and that I will listen to a lot.
Okay, I think that's what most people, I think, who are in your position putting out music, they want to put out something that they already like and they get, because you want to share that, right? You want to get that music out there. As far as this genre though, what I don't mean to sound ignorant about the genre, but I am kind of. I mean, my heavy music it doesn't really
Yeah,
get
I get it.
much more heavier than doom metal. That's about the limit for me. So when you get into this really extreme stuff, what makes a good tape? What kind of sound is actually something that you would consider to be good? Because I mean, a lot of it to the uninitiated, I guess, it is just noise, right? I mean, it can
For
sound like.
sure.
How do you tell when something's good? I hate saying that because it sounds like I'm kind of being a dick or something, but you know what I mean, right? Like,
No, yeah, I totally get what you're talking about. For me, there's a lot of like factors that go into what I consider a good release. Like obviously there's the first one, do I like listening to it? But then like beyond that, obviously there's the like questions of like, is it like, we have to separate between like the grind releases that I do and the noise releases
sure,
that I do, because
sure.
the grind releases, I would just go by largely how other people tend to judge the stuff. And
okay.
like I tend to think I have pretty normie tastes when it comes to grindcore, as much as it's not a normie genre in the
Right, of
first
course,
place.
yeah.
But when it comes to like specifically noise, I think it's there's a lot of factors that have to play into making a good release. You have to like keep in mind, sort of like sound texture of it, like the like the idea portrayed by it, and if the idea portrayed by it is portrayed well, in the same sense as like an abstract art piece. When you're
sure.
looking at an abstract art piece that's clearly meant to mean something, it's kind of like extrapolating that meaning from an abstract art piece,
Well, that makes
because
sense.
noise is, yeah.
Sure, and I've
It
talked
is
to people on the show who do avant-garde stuff, mainly kind of jazz artists who are doing things that are pretty far out there. And I mean, that kind of stuff, I think I have a better grasp on just because I've listened to more of it. And it is what you're saying, right? It's texture. It's about like the overall feel of a piece, right? Rather than the specific notes or chorus or whatever. It's just kind of the whole vibe of the thing, I guess, really, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, there's yeah, I don't know. And I like to make my tapes like an art piece in and of themselves that just complements the piece that's already made in the form of the music or noise, depending on the release.
Well, I was gonna ask about that actually, because I mean, like, again, because some of this stuff is just noise that is kind of hard to, I guess, get what the message is without having that extra element, right? Having the song titles on there, having the artwork that, especially when you're talking about things that are political and have those politics that you look for in your label, right? I guess part of the packaging has to portray that in a way that the music maybe can't.
For sure, yeah. Another helpful thing is that a couple of times I've like, mostly with my own personal project, Two Line Struggle, it's one of the projects that I have.
Okay.
I will work to find a good like piece of political writing that I can print out as a zine and then send with the tape to people who order it.
Okay.
Although that's more rare because I tend to just do that when it's mostly with my own project.
Okay. Well, and that's not much different from what punk and hardcore bands have done for ages too, right? It's just,
absolutely.
That stuff is more just direct in terms of the message because the vocals are clearer, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the same idea though, for sure. I get that. Yeah. And so is this as far as tapes? I mean, I know that most heavy genres of music, tapes have been sort of the format, regardless of what else has gone on in the world with the streaming or CDs or vinyl or whatever. Tapes have always been there. So I assume this is probably the reason you went with tapes too, right? Is because it's sort of the style that people are used to already.
There's a lot of things I like about tapes, to be honest. It's
I love them too, so I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to them that people don't think about. Like, there's obviously the fact that they're tiny, they don't take up that much space compared to like vinyl,
Yeah.
they're cheap to produce and to buy, so it's easier for fans who have less money to still be able to have physical copies of the music. And also they're really tough. Like,
Yeah.
I had a friend buy a tape once, and on the way home it fell out of their pocket and got run over by a car, and it still worked.
Yeah.
Like, tapes are great.
Yeah, they're indestructible. Like I'm almost 40 and I have tapes from when I was 13 that I still have that have just
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
they've lasted. I mean, they're a bit beat up now, but I can still play them, right? So yeah, for sure. There's that. So where CDs have this shelf life that is not great. I mean, I do have some CDs I've had for decades too, but tapes are they withstand a lot.
Yeah, they're pretty resilient.
Yeah. What has the response been like since? First of all, how long have you been doing this? Because I know it's relatively new, but it's been a few years, right?
Yeah. Let me think. Sorry, I've got to count the years. I think I started it 2 or 3 years. About.
Well, it doesn't help because the years of time doesn't exist anymore because of the pandemic. So everyone.
Yeah, because of COVID, that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. What has that been like running this during COVID? I mean, I'm sick of talking about it. I'm sure you are. Everyone is sick of talking about it. But over the course of the past 2 years, like everyone I've talked to, whether it's someone who has a label, an artist, anybody involved in music, there's been something has affected them with this pandemic. And I mean, I know you're making tapes, you can do that, and you're one person job, but you can do that kind of anyway. But what is the impact then on you?
It's definitely a little harder. I tend not to sell as much because of the pandemic, because people just don't have as much money now because of it to spend on things like cassettes. But there's also been like Bandcamp Fridays been a thing because of that, and most of my sales since the pandemic started have been on Bandcamp Friday.
Cool.
I don't get them often, but like anytime that I sell something on Bandcamp Friday, I sell a bunch, and it's really nice because I get all the money from it. Yeah. And Ethan doesn't get to line his pockets with my money anymore. Ethan Diamond, CEO of Bandcamp. I mean,
yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, Backhand Friday has been huge for so many people too. I'm glad they're still doing it because it's. I mean,
same.
As someone who doesn't like, I'm old and set in my ways, and I only listen to physical stuff, so I don't know how to do Spotify or any of that stuff. So when it comes to listening to things online before I buy it, Bandcamp is pretty much the way that I do things. So I'm glad that it exists. Yeah. What's the scene like when I know there's no scene for anything right now because shows aren't happening, but in the before times, I mean, for grind and noise and this kind of stuff, was there a big community locally, and were there some relatively popular artists?
I've heard that there was more of a noise scene before, but I've never actually encountered it in Winnipeg. It's funny because like I've released for bands who have told me they've gone and played in Winnipeg, or at least one band, that they've gone and played in Winnipeg, and the artist was like, yeah, there was a few local bands that opened for it, and I don't know any of them, and I wish I knew them because I'm a noise label in Winnipeg and a noise artist, but for grind, on the other hand, Winnipeg is like, it's the best city you can live in if you listen to grindcore. Like one of the best grindcore bands in the world right now is from Winnipeg, Archigathus, and then you've got,
and they've been around for a long time too, and so have
exactly
for years.
Yeah, and like most of the Winnipeg scene just like built off of that, and has become an amazing scene. Like I found it's really good. It's like the music scene that I feel the most at home in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Personally.
Well, I imagine it's fairly insular too, in the sense that there's probably not a lot of crossover between like a noise artist and then a rock band or something. The shows would probably be fairly separate, right? I mean, so some genres you can very easily play on a bill with each other, but you're not going to get a blues act and then a noise artist opening. I mean, it would be cool, but it's unlikely, right?
About that, the first show I ever played actually was at Bulldog Pizza.
Okay.
And I don't want to complain too much, but the person who was booking it didn't really know who to book me with, and so I ended up with like two very good like one very good hard rock band and a very good band that covered a bunch of old metal songs, like by Metallica and Black Sabbath and stuff, who I'm actually friends with one of the members still. They're in Hopscotch Battle Scars now.
Oh, cool.
But, you know, it was a very strange show because you had like normal music playing, and then the last set there was just me with playing a bunch of ear-splitting shit, screaming and stuff. About half the crowd left, I think, if I remember correctly. It was pretty funny.
But then you got half the crowd staying there, right? So that's I guess that's always the thing, right? You're going to get someone who's never heard it before and is going to be like, "Oh, this is cool," and they're going to actually stick around and check out what it is.
Yeah. Like I've it's something that I forgot to mention with the COVID thing is that it used to be much more easy for me to sell merch of my own project because I would play shows.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, people would there was always a bunch of people who would buy them at my shows. But now it's really just the releases I do for other people that sell for the most part, or my band Clavicle Eruption, which is with someone else. So most people are just buying it for their contribution to the album.
Oh, they're still buying it though, right? So
yeah, true. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what is the deal with all of the extreme gore stuff? I mean, like, you know, there seems to be just like the first of all the best band names because it's always some insane medical, you know, which is hilarious. But where does all that come from? Like, what is it? Just like people who are into death metal decide to go one step further or something?
Yeah, well, it's basically first there was grindcore, and then like from grindcore originated gore grind, which was like started out with stuff like Carcass and stuff, with a lot of like pitch shifting on the vocals to make it lower and sound more gross and shit, and you'd and then eventually, like I think in the late 90s, gore noise started to come around, which is what like the kind of gore stuff that I release generally is gore noise. It's not that different, but there's a distinction. It's like gore grind mixed with just noise and as an umbrella term. So it's much more raw, much more like what's the word I'm looking for? Like violent sounding.
Okay.
You know, and it's something that I really like. I like the sound.
No, that's a good reason to like anything, right?
And I like to release it. I don't know.
Fair enough. Well, I guess maybe a better question is there anything that you wouldn't put on a tape cover as far as like medical photos and shit? Because that is a part of it, right? I mean, like
good
death
question.
photos and things like that. Like, is there a line that you would draw?
My line, I don't like when someone is recognizable.
Sure.
Like I think that's insensitive. I don't judge any artists that do that, but I don't like to release it myself.
Okay.
When there's something like if there's someone in the picture that's recognizable, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Just doesn't go right with me.
Anonymous mutilations and body parts and stuff, that's cool, but once
and I also generally if I'm gonna use an album cover like that, although I tend to usually use my own art over that, I generally would prefer like medical imagery because there's a certain, I don't know, there's like, I'm just terrified of hospitals and it's a nice way to cope, I guess. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and hopefully, you know, the diseases and stuff you're picking are weird enough that it's not something you're ever gonna have to deal with, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully. Well, I mean, I've always said like that if I die in a horrific accident, I will be disappointed in the afterlife if no one used it as an album cover.
Right. I think you need to put that in a will or tattoo it on yourself or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a do not resuscitate, but do not bury me without using me as an album cover.
what's with the Garfield stuff? Because I was looking at some of the releases you have on your label, and there's like tons of Garfield shit, which is it's
Okay.
hilarious. But what is the deal with that? Like, I like it, but I don't get it.
Okay. It kind of started with the artist Canine Hemorrhoids, who
Okay.
I've released a lot of stuff for, as you know. They made an album called Garfield is Dead.
Right.
And it like kind of took on and started turning like different just like noisecore and gore noise bands just started using Garfield as an image. And there's a certain like aesthetic to it I like, that's like, I don't know, like perverting a highly corporatized character and turning him into something else. Like, you know, have you ever seen Lasagna Cat?
I'm not sure if I have. Is that really gross, gigantic, like bulbous Garfield?
I think that's I'm Sorry, John.
Okay, there's a bunch of them. Right? It's like a whole Garfield core industry online or something. It's weird.
Yes, there is. The one that I'm thinking of is, it was this YouTube channel in the early 2000s that was, or not in the early 2000s, in the 2000s.
Okay.
It made live action versions of Garfield comics, and it was supposed to do so in a way that pointed out just how unfunny Garfield is as intended. If you view it as intended, sort of. And the fact that it's just been like a corpse being dragged through piles of money just so that Jim Davis can keep raking in that cash.
Well, I think it's the best example of that too, because he doesn't even write it anymore. He has like a team of people who've been doing it for like 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he just cashes in. Yeah, for sure.
And so it's kind of like that in a sense, in that like by turning it into noisecore and connecting it to such a violent sounding genre, you kind of do that sort of thing and are able to portray this like decaying of corporate imagery, you know?
Right.
Maybe I'm thinking of it too deep, but that's how I see it myself.
Right. It could just be people are making fun of Garfield, but I think
but that's how I use it.
That fits in with the politics too that you're talking about too, as well, right? Like having the message with this kind of music as well, and that makes sense. Tearing down kind of the corporate Garfield. Yeah, for sure. So if people are hearing about your label for the first time on this show, what's the best way to find your releases and to hear some of the stuff that you're putting out?
There's my Bandcamp that has anything that I release on physical media, whether it's my projects or someone else's. And there's my Bandcamp for Two Line Struggle, which is my harsh noise project. And then there's my YouTube channel, which is Fizzle Inc. And on there, I upload pretty much any music for my friends. I upload pretty much anything that I have made, and I release obscure like tape rips of tapes I found at thrift stores that have like zero online record on there. Cool. It's kind of a mishmash, but if you want to look for my projects or pretty much anything I put out, you look there.
Cool. And then as far as I mean, like you said before, Backhand Friday is kind of a good way to support the label and then to get some of this stuff. Right now, is that the best way to do it, through Bandcamp, or do you have other means of obtaining these tapes?
Bandcamp, or if someone is in Winnipeg and wants to buy something from me, message me on either my Instagram, or just message me anywhere you find me. My Instagram, my email, my Bandcamp through the messaging or not
Okay.
messaging, but contact me thing that it has.
Yeah, they have that
built in.
form thing. Yeah.
Yeah, or message me on my Facebook, Lilliana
Cool.
Fest,
Okay.
because Canada Post has started charging ridiculous prices for shipping within Canada.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I'd rather just bring it to someone's house.
For sure. Do you find that most of your customers are local, or is it really all over the
Most
place?
of them are from the US.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which is nowadays wonders for shipping, to
Yeah.
be honest, because anytime that I'm shipping anything more than like one tape, the shipping is like 16 to 20 bucks for something within Canada, even within Winnipeg.
It's crazy.
It's nuts. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. But yeah, and I guess people can listen to it obviously on Bandcamp too, right? Is it on any of the other streaming stuff, or is it just Bandcamp?
Just Bandcamp. Although I have been uploading a lot of my stuff on SoulSeek, if you know it.
Does that still exist?
Yeah, it still exists.
Huh.
It's
like
Napster,
I've heard
but
that
in
name
the
in like 20
modern
years.
day. I don't know how old it is. I just got introduced to it recently, so I started uploading all of my stuff because no one else was pirating my stuff on SoulSeek. I might as well seed it myself.
Right on. That's pretty cool, actually. I'm gonna look that up now. I thought SoulSeek was something from 20 years ago, but maybe it's a thing I should be checking out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I just started using it though.
Cool. And then for the Bandcamp, what's the URL for the Bandcamp? I'll link to it too, but if you want to just
the Bandcamp is just no caps. Some music can hurt you at bandcamp.bandcamp.com.
Awesome.